works of Toby Fox for over a decade now. What's his deal? Why is he so mysterious? Is he gay? All the questions we will tackle in this discussion about Deltarune and the nature of art.
Hey guys, I'm Near, or Shade the Shadow. I just realized I never recorded any sort of intro to this, so I'm just gonna do it now. Chapter 5 is coming out, like, probably in less than a day for when this releases, which kind of sucks because I wanted to get this out way earlier, but that is entirely my fault. It's releasing on my birthday, Deltarune. I'm super pumped. As for this video, I'm going to be talking about the nature of creation and artistry within Deltarune and some of my interpretations and deconstructing the ideas Deltarune lays down in a very specific, weird way. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope this brings a somewhat unique perspective. I know I tread a lot on already covered ground in this video, but I think there's some cool stuff. Regardless, I just hope you have fun with it. Deltarune tomorrow. I'm so pumped. This chapter is going to destroy me. But let's get into it. Let's talk about the nature of artistry, of creator and audience in Deltarune, of our engagement with these characters and this world. But to do that, we need to shed some light on our favorite mystery man, Gaster. I'm assuming most of you already know the basic in-game lore of Dr. W.D. Gaster, so if you don't want to hear it again for the millionth time, skip to whatever timestamp I'm putting in the edit, or just put this in 2x speed, or just sit through it, because I'm gonna go as fast as I can, and maybe a refresher would be nice. So let's just get into it. Alright, so in Undertale there's a fun value system that assigns you a number from 1 to 100 on every new playthrough of Undertale, and these numbers correspond to certain events. The events that we are looking at today all occur in the 60s. From 61 to 63 are the Gaster followers, and they essentially glaze Gaster for all of their dialogue, and we can learn a few very important things about Gaster. We learned that he was the royal scientist before Alphys. We learned that he completely disappeared, apparently shattering across time and space. We learned that he created the core, the power source of the underground. We also learned that he fell into his experiment, and his creation went wrong somehow, and his life was cut short. It's also implied that he has some sort of omnipresence, as one of the Gaster followers say that they are holding a piece of him, and another says that he is listening to the conversation that they are having. Next is probably the most iconic fun event in all of Undertale, the Mystery Man Room. This occurs at Fun Value 66, which summons a new hallway and waterfall. And in this hallway, there's a 1 in 10 chance to get this gray door. Behind this gray door is a cramped gray room with this guy in there. Now, there's some debate about whether this is the actual appearance of Gaster, but that's not really relevant today, and I don't want to go through it. But let's just assume this is Gaster. I mean, look at his hands and look at the night hands. It's Gaster. Interacting with him causes him to do whatever the fuck this face is and play a sound effect. The sound effect is Muse_mystery_go and also occurs with one of the Gaster followers after he declares that he is holding a piece of Gaster. The sound effect slow down and reverse contains Gaster's theme. Gaster's theme is an infamous theme that also occurs via a fun event, specifically at 65 with the sound test room. This contains a few very simple jingles such as the Banger Trouble Dingle. And of course, Gaster's theme, Muse_st_him. Due to being very simple, it's heard pretty much everywhere, but some cases seem especially intentional, such as in Deltarune's Another Hymn. Another important thing, Gaster actually has stats in Undertale's data. These are all just multitudes of sixes, you know, like the Mark of the Beast, which, aside from being very edgy, is relevant, and I will touch on it later. Next is Entry 17, a room unattainable in any normal playthrough, and relates to the entries in the True Lab where Alphys works. However, this is most definitely not Alphys, as this is written entirely in Wingdings, and Dr. W.D. Gaster is assumed that the W.D. stands for Wingdings, not to mention that in the files this room is called room_Gaster, I believe, and when translated, the tone is entirely different from anything Alphys was right. It reads as follows. Entry number 17, dark, darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing. The shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? And the music playing during this is titled Muse_smile, which is also important. Now, next is the Twitter takeover. Now, before any of us knew that Deltarune was even supposed to be a thing, it was teased and then launched via the official Undertale Twitter, which was rebranded to have a blank profile picture, and the username was changed to 6
6 blacked out letters, and Gaster has 6 letters in it. Plus, the tone is very similar to entry 17. Hell, it's even quoted with the very, very interesting. In it, Gaster talks about something new, something he knows we will find exciting, and obviously we did. He states that it is not complete and that he needs our help to actualize it by answering a few questions, and then it was released as survey_program, which was Deltarune Chapter 1. Deltarune. Now, when we boot up Deltarune, this same voice with the same tone is the very first thing we see, asks if we are connected, and guides us through creating the vessel. Before that vessel is discarded and we are put into Chris's body. Then Gaster is mostly absent throughout the game except for a few death screens, such as the Chapter 1 death screen where he comments on her death and asks if we will choose to proceed or not. Then this death screen just doesn't really happen except for Chapter 3, where it sort of returns during the night fight, where if you lose to the night, which you definitely will, Gaster comments on the difficulty of the night fight and sort of in an encouraging way asks if we want to keep going. He also comments on if you're missing the Shadow Mantle, which makes the fight way easier. And finally, there's the halfway mark speech at the end of Chapter 4, where he comments on us attaining the halfway mark, and then he says the cool thing, which is how much longer now, my Deltarune. Then there's also the bunker. If you get close to it in Hometown, it is emitting a low noise, which is Muse_Smile, which played during entry 17, just slowed down by a factor of 666%, I believe. This same slowed down Muse_Smile also plays in Carol's basement during the Chapter 4 Light World Soul segment. Hey folks, I forgot to mention that Muse_Smile also plays if you use Chris's cell phone in any of the Dark Worlds, but that's not really relevant to today's analysis, discussion, ramble, whatever this is. So let's just move on to that. I didn't go too in-depth in some things, so I just wanted to put down the foundations, for example, especially the Twitter takeover, but I will go in-depth when I'm talking about my interpretation of these things. So let's just move on, and there's going to be a really sick transition to the next scene. I could have used my phone to film this, but this shit looks terrible, and it's making everything super green for some reason, which is really funny, so I'm just going to roll with this. Anyways, despite this horde of information I just laid out in front of you, some people still genuinely deny Gaster's importance towards the game, which is insane to me, just in terms of sheer quantity about how many times this Gaster fellow has been mentioned, how many ties there are with Deltarune. But to normal people and from what I've observed, most of the Deltarune community, Gaster does serve significance to the story of Deltarune. And it's pretty common consensus that Gaster appears to be embodying the role of a sort of game dev. But why is that? First of all, we can take a look at the grander themes of Deltarune itself. Deltarune is a story about stories. Most clearly, we can see this with the Dark Worlds. Within a Dark World, the Lightner's will, determination, sort of converts mundane things to a large fantastical story, like how a child would play pretend. You know, objects turn into these quirky, fun characters with personalities and goals and everything. Dark Worlds are fantastical, magical, an element that is very prominently missing from Deltarune's Light World, unlike Undertale where magic is just inherent to monsters. So we can see this sort of element of fantasy within Deltarune's Dark Worlds that are sort of akin to playing pretend. So much so that when Chapter 1 released and the Dark World was sealed and we see Chris and Susie in the abandoned classroom, there was a theory that they were just playing pretend with the objects in the abandoned classroom. And while obviously that's not true anymore, we can see that there is definitely an element of play, of fantasy, of role play within the Dark Worlds of Deltarune. You know, characters engage with the Dark Worlds, they engage with fiction, and it changes them. Dark Worlds often reflect their lives within the Light World, whether that be the issues they face or their desires. You know, we see this especially in Chapter 4, where we learn that each Dark World sort of reflects the subconscious of the Lightner that creates them. You know, with Susie, her false curse and fight scene, I don't know what it's called. You can also see this in Chapter 3 with the TV world, which, you know, we see Chris create, and a lot of their subconscious is reflected within the TV world, like their family issues, and also there's some interesting things we can glean from the sword route. There's a big connection with your desires and your personhood reflecting in Dark World, just like how our subconscious is reflected within fiction. But, you know, for the majority of Deltarune, I feel like the Lightners have a clear preference for the Dark World. Obviously, it's different if you do the weird route, but I'm not touching on that right now. Of course, these kids who have, you know, complicated family lives and things they struggle with would want to live in a world, in a fantasy world, where everything seems solvable, everything seems like it can be fixed, like it's within grasp, you know, a world with axes and battles and magic, where everything can be healed with a little spell. So to stop the yap, I just mean Deltarune is a story about stories, and it's constantly adding layers towards the idea of engaging with a narrative. You know, the in-game book series, Gerson's book series, Lord of the Hammer, is based off of the in-game prophecy, and Lord of the Hammer inspires Dragon Blazers in-game as well, and there's a lot of Dragon Blazers parallels within the Dark Worlds. You know, there's the Sword Route, which is Chris engaging with a fictional video game in Chapter 3. We see the characters within Deltarune engaging with fiction via the Dark Worlds, and then, obviously, at the grandest scale, is us engaging with Deltarune and the fictional characters and world of Deltarune. So yeah, the layers of stories and engaging with a narrative are definitely very relevant to Deltarune. Now, the idea of like engaging with fiction was obviously explored in Undertale as well, with it serving as a commentary on how we engage with the medium of video games. Particularly, Flowey reflects our sort of endless need to re-engage with fiction and Undertale itself, to the point of complete dissociation and numbness as we try to extract every possible experience out of something. So clearly, Toby Fox is interested in exploring a meta-narrative. Huge fucking shocker. But if Deltarune and Undertale have already tackled and are tackling the idea of a player engaging with fiction, I feel like it makes sense for especially Deltarune to explore the flip side of that, how the creator engages with their fiction. So to me and to a lot of people, Gaster is that exploration. Even before booting up Deltarune, he is the one to sort of introduce Deltarune to us, to encourage us to participate in it, to engage with it via the Twitter takeovers, as I mentioned before. He is the one who wants to show us something. He is excited. He wants to make a new future with us. He wants us to experience this. He wants us to experience Deltarune. This is his thing. Throughout all of these tweets, there's this intense air of passion and excitement from Gaster. He is excited about this. He seems to be claiming some sort of ownership, some love for Deltarune. Another indicator of Gaster's involvement is Survey Program's version number. If Survey Program was what Deltarune was actually called when it was released via the Twitter takeover. And the initial version number was in fact 0.6.6.6. Again, the motif of 6 and especially 6 in multitudes. Then in Deltarune, he's the one who greets us, who guides us into Deltarune, who makes sure we are connected. He is the one guiding us through the Goner Maker. It's Gaster. He is sort of an out-of-bounds guide to us, it seems. Gaster is the one connecting us to the world of Deltarune. If you want more insight, like more than I could ever give in a million years, check out the device theory. It's pretty long, but it is super impressive and expansive, and such an in-depth take that I feel like supports this. More stuff in game, specifically the file select screens in Chapter 1, where very Gaster-like, Gaster tone text narrates our actions with the file. Also, one thing I just want to touch on, as I mentioned before, the Gaster followers say that he fell into his creation, and I see most people just assuming this is the core, as that is his creation. But it's never specified that he fell into the core. It could be very well that he fell into a Dark World or whatever experiments he was doing with Dark Worlds. So just something to keep in mind, because I feel like that's relevant. He is present during the PlayStation achievements as well. That's his commentary over it.
And also comments on them if you miraculously fail to achieve any.
During our death screen, he gives us the option to try again. He comments on it. He seems to be out of bounds of the actual world of Deltarune, but he is guiding us externally in an out of bounds fashion. He is letting us interact with the world of Deltarune. And most meaningful to me is during the night fight. He comments on your death. He comments on if you're missing the Shadow Mantle. He comments on that. If you get very close to the climax of the night fight, he comments on that, encouraging you to push forward. And that is, I feel like this is such like a dungeon master like tone and narration. Feels like a dungeon master trying to give hints to their players. Hey, do this. Maybe you're not strong enough yet. Again, no real basis for this. You can feel it, right? You can feel it. And again, even ignoring that, he is commenting on things in an out-of-bounds nature. He is directly tied with the out-of-bounds of Deltarune, with the outside workings of Deltarune. I feel like that definitely implies that he is some sort of creator, or at least overseer over Deltarune. And I think the two nails in the coffin for this, one, the more obvious one, is during the halfway mark speech at the end of Chapter 4. He just says my Deltarune, just outright. This is his Deltarune. That's it. You might have paid $25 for it, but this is his Deltarune. My Deltarune. Your Deltarune.
Boy, I paid.
And secondly, I believe in 2015, the Deltarune.com website had wingdings in it, and an excerpt from entry 17. This next experiment seems very, very interesting, and as I said before, Gaster says very, very interesting during the first Twitter takeover as well. So, you know, if wingdings that says this next experiment seems very, very interesting appears on Deltarune.com before the game was ever announced, I feel like that implies something with Gaster creating and experimenting with Deltarune. I don't know about you. But yeah, it's pretty evident that Gaster is, if not the creator of Deltarune, at least some sort of overseer of Deltarune. What the fuck is going on with my hair? Has it been this bad? So yeah, Gaster is definitely some sort of creator. If not of Deltarune, he is definitely overseeing it and at least tied to connecting us with it in some way. And now it is time to move on, and there's going to be a sick transition right now.
But yeah, all of that goes to show Gaster's role as the creator, and I think that role is sort of parallel to Toby Fox, and I think there's something grand he wants to say about the nature of art and the nature of creation. But to understand what I think Toby Fox is trying to convey about fiction and about artistry, we need to take a look at a friend of mine, Emmanuel Levinas, a French philosopher. Now, Levinas emphasized ethics as the first philosophy, before any of the large structural sort of systems that a lot of other philosophers, in contrast to many other philosophers who sort of put emphasis on these large structural systems. Levinas argued that before we can construct or deconstruct any of those things, we are confronted with other people and we are confronted with ethics. I'll be focusing on his essay, Reality and Its Shadow, which is a really good read, and I was super giddy reading it, mainly because of how much of a Deltarune goldmine it is. And first of all, by no means am I a philosophy expert. I struggle to understand this stuff a lot of the time, and especially Levinas because he writes very, very weirdly. So if I get anything wrong, don't tell me, don't comment it, keep it to yourself, please. Levinas talks about art and reality and its shadow, specifically art as an expression, yes, but also art as an illusion. Art does not know a particular type of reality. Essentially, Levinas says that with a real object, we can grasp it in a tangible way. Already by action, we maintain a living relationship with a real object. We grasp it, we conceive it. However, with the artistic sort of representation of an object, this sort of real relationship is neutralized, and the representation is fundamentally disengaged with reality. The image neutralizes this real relationship, this primary conceiving through action. However, Levinas does not view this disengagement as one-sided, as in he doesn't view it in the sense that what is present in the art is the only thing disengaged with reality. Instead, he talks about how the audience is also disengaged with reality from the moment that we engage with the artistic representation. He describes art as almost a sort of spell that sweeps us up and away from reality. An image marks a hold over us rather than our initiative. Possessed, inspired, an artist, we say, harkens to a muse. An image is musical. Its passivity is directly visible in magic, song, music, and poetry. This is Levinas emphasizing on that sort of sweeping nature of art. Beyond our initial engagement, we don't really have to make an effort to feel something about the art, even if that feeling is boredom. We don't have to tell ourselves, I'm gonna like Papyrus, I'm gonna like Des, I'm gonna like Susie. It just sort of happens automatically as we get swept up in the story. It's something that sweeps us away the moment we engage with art. It is a relationship. But they impose themselves on us without our assuming them, or rather our consenting to them is inverted into a participation. Their entry into us is one with our entry into them. This is the captivation or incantation of poetry and music. It is a mode of being to which applies neither the form of consciousness, since the I is there stripped of its prerogative to assume its power, nor the form of unconsciousness, since the whole situation and all its articulations are in a dark light, present, such as a waking dream. Now, Levinas is likening the artistic experience to dreams, specifically in relation to our engagement with art. With the illusion of art, we are not just ourselves grounded in reality, but we turn into a more anonymous spectator within the world of art. As soon as we engage with artistic representation, we become a part of it, and we can't control how we get swept up by it. Similar to a dream, we are embedded within a dream, but we don't really have any control over where it turns. As we disengage with our real selves, we become among the artistic world, and we take part in the spectacle. Sort of passage from oneself onto anonymity. I was so giddy reading this because the soul is literally a manifestation of this idea. When we choose to engage with the world of Deltarune, we are physically put into it in the form of the soul. This is us, but with a certain extent of anonymity. Sort of like a suspension of disbelief, we disengage with our real selves to engage with the fictional. And the anonymity Levinas talks about is sort of our separation from our real selves. Interesting in the sense of involving, in the etymological sense, to be among things which should have had only the status of objects. It is among things as a thing, as part of the spectacle. The line of being among things which should have had only the status of objects both works on a narrative and meta-narrative level, as that is what the Lightners do literally with the Dark World, with literal objects, and that is what we are doing with the soul to the world of Deltarune. Fiction being related to dreams just made my Deltarune rotted brain spark and light up and produce so many happy chemicals, because that is something that we see in the game, and the origins of Deltarune was Toby Fox's dream. But let's go back into what Levinas says about representations in art. Levinas says that with representations in art, we see a sort of reflection of reality. The real world appears in it as it were between parentheses or quote marks. When something is represented in fiction, it is a reflection, a double, a shadow as Levinas calls it. Reality would not be only what it is disclosed to be in truth, but it would also be its double, its shadow, its image. One of the larger ideas here is that the representation of something, however real it feels, also emphasizes its unreality, if that makes any sense. The inherent unreality of a fictional representation hits as deep as it is real to you. It is essentially an illusion, as Levinas says. Any representation insists on its absence by the nature of simply representing something. Levinas also talks about how these artistic representations don't give us a clear view into reality, but instead a sort of distorted alternate view of reality in this different dimension. The painting then does not lead us beyond the given reality, but somehow to the hither side of it. It is a symbol in reverse. So through representations, we are not getting a one-to-one relation with reality, but instead a distorted one. Even if it is an allegory for something real, or has a tether to reality, it is not a clear mirror. Levinas also talks about how these reverse realities feed into each other. Does art imitate nature, or does natural beauty imitate art? Levinas says that this question ignores the simultaneity of truth and image. Again, I was so giddy reading this, because if you look at the Rousey monologue at the top of chapter 3, Rousey practically quotes Levinas. When Rousey is explaining the nature of dark worlds, of fiction, of art, he says, an alternate view of reality through the lens of shadow, an illusion. Practically the same wording, and it's relevant because of the despair of that scene. The despair is that through representing reality, it also emphasizes its unreality, that Rousey can't do their homework, that Rousey can't go to them with the festival. It is an illusion. Dark worlds are a reflection of reality, a distorted one at that. This perfectly sort of ties into Levinas's idea of art.
Hey guys, one more thing. Also I am Scottish. Darkness in Deltarune also has mad ties to water. We can see this immediately with dark fountains, and before we even know what they are, before Chris wakes up in the chapter 1 plus a dark world, we hear water before being able to control them again. There are more instances where this is emphasized, such as the shadow crystals being described as a sharp shadow moves like water in the hand, plus all the ice stuff with Noel and the song from the ocean. So water is clearly relevant to Deltarune, especially with how looking through the shadow crystals sort of shows a seemingly distorted, alternate reality, and water itself distorts light. Something cool to note with Levinas's philosophy. Plus to bring it back to Noelle, she says she can't see because of the snow when she makes frozen chicken nuggets. Again, a distortion of sight and stuff, you get it?
I just think how much it ties together is really cool. Next we'll go into what Levinas says about the static nature of art. Levinas refers to art as an instant that endures indefinitely. He talks about statues, not just literally, but he says that every artwork is in the end a statue, a stoppage of time, or rather its delay behind itself. Art is sort of infinitely immobile. He explains it really well in this paragraph, and it's not written that confusingly, and also I really like this paragraph, so I'm just going to read it as is. A statue realizes the paradox of an instant that endures without a future. Its duration is not really an instant. It has in its own way a quasi-eternal duration. We are not thinking of just the duration of an artwork itself as an object, of the permanence of writings in libraries and of statues in museums. Within the life, or rather the death of a statue, an instant endures infinitely. Eternally, Laocoon will be caught up in the grip of serpents. The Mona Lisa will smile eternally. Eternally, the future announced in the strained muscles of Laocoon will be unable to become present. Eternally, the smile of the Mona Lisa about to broaden will not broaden. An eternally suspended future floats around the congealed position of a statue like a future forever to come. The imminence of the future lasts before an instant strip of the essential characteristics of the present, its evanescence. Levinas is not exclusively referring to actual static art like statues and paintings necessarily. In a book or a movie, even if a character dramatically changes, there is still a sort of infinitely static nature to that. A future forever to come. The characters are static in a sense. They are doomed to walk the same lines forever and ever, doomed to make the same choices, doomed to become whatever they were destined to become. And while I assume Levinas never played a video game, this sentiment has a very special relation to the medium. Video games give us sort of the closest thing to emulating free will within a fictional setting. If we take a look at Flowey and our relationship with Undertale, even if we play it 100 times and try to get as much out of it as we possibly can, eventually there will be nothing beyond what is written in the code. The same lines of code will execute again and again, over and over, and such is the static nature of art. It is just that the life of an artwork does not go beyond the limit of an instant. And if we take a look at the Dark Nerds in Deltarune, what happens when the world is completely entrenched in darkness, i.e. the roaring? What happens when no light is left, and all we see is shadow, all we see is fiction, all we see is disengaged with reality? The Dark Nerds turn into statues. When the light runs low and all that is left is darkness, is shadow, is fiction, the static nature of these characters is extremely evident. And again, Levinas's ideas are manifesting physically within the Deltarune world. At the end of Chapter 4, where all of the characters are sort of forced to confront predeterminism, that is the sentiment that is there, the static nature of fiction, that their fate is already decided. In contrast, and this is a really important part of Levinas's philosophy, in reality, Levinas talks about how we cannot fully grasp people, that we cannot and should not reduce people into concepts, that the other is sort of this infinitely incomprehensible being that we can never truly grasp. We can never inhabit them as we inhabit ourselves. They are ever-changing beings, and they are sort of incomprehensible in a way because of their spontaneity. Even if you're best friends with someone, they will eventually do something that surprises you, that you could have never seen coming. We can know them to an extent, but again, we can never inhabit them. We can never reduce them down, or we shouldn't. Essentially, freedom is spontaneity. It is existing beyond a frozen instant. And when Levinas talks about art as an illusion and the static nature of it, it relates really well with the themes of predeterminism in Deltarune. They are enclosed in their fate. Art is the falling movement on hither side of time into fate. The characters of a novel are beings that are shut up, prisoners. Their history is never finished, but it still goes on, but makes no headway. A novel shuts beings up in a fate despite their freedom. This ties in so fucking well with the themes of predeterminism in Deltarune.
That is basically what a secret boss like Spamton is about wanting freedom, spontaneity, and looking into a higher realm above yourself, the realm that we inhabit, reality.
We see Dark Nerds within the world of Deltarune, inhabitants of essentially fiction, so they are sort of trapped. And again, this applies meta-narratively too. Even though Chris and Susie and Noelle and Birdley are lighteners and sort of free from the bounds of darkness, because they are fictional, they are also sort of trapped into this predetermined nature. They are doomed by the prophecy, but even if they avoid that, they are still static in a way. And with Levinas's idea of, fictional statues literally manifesting in Deltarune, it's really cool. But is that sort of it? Is Levinas and maybe Toby Fox saying that, hey, these characters are always going to be doomed to fiction, always going to be doomed to a static nature, forever, no matter what? And while technically true, Levinas and I think Deltarune have something brighter to say about the relationship with us and art.
In reality and its shadow, Levinas places a huge emphasis on our engagement with art, specifically through criticism, discourse, and interpretation. He essentially says that art is incomplete without our engagement. A really good paper that I'll put in the description put it really well. Art criticism and philosophical exegesis is not extraneous to art, but an essential component to it. Art is only complete with the simultaneous act of disengaging with reality and tethering the art to reality. And with how much Deltarune emphasizes light and dark, fiction and reality and its contrast, I think this is relevant to the thesis of Deltarune, its idea of art in a way. Nowhere else is this more evident than Gaster and us, opposing forces of creator and audience. One is entrenched in fiction, in darkness, reaching out to us in reality, and us in reality are sort of entrenching ourselves in fiction. With fiction being entrenched in shadow, we are the light. We are the balance, and that is what Levinas argues creates art in its full form. And I want to bring up Gaster's ties with the devil. Again, the multitudes of 666, Mark of the Beast. Aside from being mad edgy, in relation to us it makes a lot of sense. We are the angel, we possess an angel doll, and the angel seems to be a being not of the world of Deltarune. And backtracking to Undertale, we are the angel in that game too, since it also has a prophecy that features the angel. In that prophecy it is said that the angel will free the underground, and we do have the ability to do so, whether that be through a literal freeing of the monsters or through their deaths. Looking at the angel prophecy panel, it seems extremely unfamiliar to the characters, again sort of indicating that it is outside of their realm. And I forget who brought this up, but since it is covered up for us, since we cannot see it, it is a black screen. And what do you see when there's a black screen? You see your reflection. So with Gaster being the devil and us being the angel in contrast, again, sort of the idea of a reflected, twisted, alternate reality is emphasized again, as it always is with light and dark and fiction and reality. We have the dark worlds, the shadow crystals that show seemingly altered reality as well. Again, constantly the idea of fiction and altered reality is emphasized. The contrast between light and dark, representation of something emphasizing its absence. A world basked in purest light, beneath it grew eternal light. Again, the eternal static of fiction that is broken by light. With the fictional world being entrenched in shadow, with Levinas' philosophy, what brings balance to it, what tethers it to reality, is our engagement and our roots to reality. It reintroduces that world into the intelligible world in which it stands, and which is the true homeland of the mind. And thus, to some extent, the static nature of art is sort of freed by our spontaneity, since we are ever-changing, ungraspable, unreducible beings. And to go back to Gaster for a second, and sort of his desperate desire to commune with us, literally through Deltarune, just how Toby Fox, Levinas places a huge emphasis on ethical discourse with the other, sort of tying it to greater truths, where the sum is greater than the extent of its parts. He argues against sort of echo chambers where one is practically just discussing with themselves and building up philosophical systems with just themselves with no contrast, no other variable. And that discourse, that mode of communication via art, is what allows for spontaneity and a freedom from a statue-like existence. Without us, when we choose to disengage with Deltarune, the world was covered in darkness. A great in-game exploration of this is Gerson. He has the freedom motif as a reflection of his freedom beyond predeterminism in the world of Deltarune. It is in the very nature of his being, in fact. He is the reflection of a lightener, of light, and darkener, of dark. Again, a synthesis of the two elements that result in freedom, that allow him to inhabit the idea of freedom, and one that goes against pure darkness, pure determinism in the form of the Titan at the end of the chapter. That is the terrible weapon he gives to the heroes. It is the white pin of hope, the sense of light that synthesizes with the dark, that allows them to be free, just as we engage with fiction. And specifically as a storyteller, Gerson places great emphasis on the idea of remixing stories. His Lord of the Hammer series is an interpretation of the prophecy in Deltarune, and then the series inspires Dragon Blazers, as I mentioned earlier. It is the sort of cyclical nature of reinterpreting art that gives it eternal life, of creator and audience being not predetermined purpose, but a dynamic cycle. To go back to our relation with Gaster in terms of angel and devil, it's relevant to bring up the nature of the devil who was once an angel, but fell, just like how Gaster fell into his creation, and how any artist gets entrenched with their work. With Toby Gaster being in our position before, it makes a lot of sense. Toby Fox constantly references, pulls from, and pays homage to a variety of video games, such as Earthbound or Cave Story, both indirectly through his art, but also directly shouting them out and commenting on them. To an artist, creating is as important as consuming, and as Levinas describes it, there is a wonder in the simultaneity of image and truth, and how both exist in parallel. And I think Gaster's journey is one parallel to Toby, and to us, where if you look back at entry 17 with Gaster being fascinated with dark worlds with shadow, I think it does parallel most likely Toby Fox's journey of discovering his own dark worlds via his experiments with RPG Maker, and obviously the infamous Earthbound Halloween ROM hack. Something very interesting when you consider the whole idea of reinterpretation we have been talking about, and the fact that Earthbound is probably the biggest inspiration for Toby Fox's work. That calls into question Gaster's influence over the world of Deltarune, a world that intentionally almost seems like a continuation of Undertale at first. Gaster's influence is external, but still able to change things in a way, mainly by connecting us into the new world of Deltarune. So I think Gaster has been making a few Halloween hacks of his own, especially when you look at the release date of Deltarune. And with Gaster paralleling Toby in this way, I guess he'd need his own like in-game animal persona thing, like the twisted, distorted version of annoying dog, what's the opposite of a white dog, like a black cat. I guess it would share similar motifs with Gaster, like smiles, sort of being in the shadows and hell. And I guess in the fandom space it would probably be like thought of in a similar way to Gaster, with it sort of being this grand villainous mystery of a creature lurking in the shadows that's kind of behind everything, skirting the line between real and fake. And with all the Gaster darkness stuff, let's have its full first appearance occur right when Rousey reaches the point of his monologue, where we have reached the other side of the dark world. Make sure that creature's the first thing we see, yeah? And make sure there's some hands there to sort of tie it to the man who speaks in hands. That sounds good enough. And one more thing about spontaneity and freedom. As Levinas described it, fiction is sort of stuck in an eternal statue, and the whole shattered across space-time thing about Gaster alludes to Gaster Toby's nature as a sort of free being, aside from just sounding cool, because we, as the creator and the audience, are sort of free beings. We have a sense of spontaneity, because we are not bound to the world of fiction entirely. And lastly, even though the roles of angel and devil are sort of dynamic and reflections of each other, one more thing I think Deltarune will comment on that we can deconstruct through Levinas is the nature of the other. Levinas talks about how we can never truly know the other through their art alone. Never fully, even if it's a good amount. Obviously, Toby Fox is sort of reflecting his experiences, and specifically his experiences with us. More jokingly, we see this with like the mic room, for example. But with Gerson's whole philosophy and with this sentiment in the Undertale 10th anniversary stream, where the thesis is sort of similar, you know, there's always more to the Undertale world if we choose to engage with it and we choose to reinterpret it. So I think it's clear that he is sort of receptive to our behavior. And with this, I think comes another reflection of our engagement with media, specifically a parasocial one. Levinas and Undertale both talk about the entrenchment in fictional worlds. We get so attached to these worlds, so entrenched in darkness. And obviously the roaring most likely reflects this, and again the sort of disassociation with reality Levinas talks about, but this time to a complete extent. But you know, with fiction and with what likely kickstarts the roaring in Deltarune, we get so invested in these worlds, we fall in love with these characters, we get unbearably attached to Sans, Papyrus, Toriel, Undyne, Alphys, and then we fall in love with the lore of the world, the mechanics of it, the timelines. How does determination function? How do the soul colors work? And after we consume all that there is to consume from the fictional world, with the medium of video games, we look into the code, scrapped sections, characters, music, things that we were never meant to see. And then finally, the last mystery that remains when we have consumed all we can is the creator, is Gaster, is Toby Fox. And Levinas sort of warns against this. He says that we can never know someone truly just from their fiction. We try to inhabit the other person and sort of reduce them down so we can consume them too, in a desperate sort of gluttonous way, the vanity Levinas warned against. We try to reduce them down and know them fully with only a piece of them, even though they are a being we will never truly grasp, even though they are an infinite being as Levinas said. They are an eternally changing being that we can never reduce down. Levinas always places great emphasis on the other nature of the other, which sounds stupid, yeah, but it's essentially about the fact that despite your closeness to anyone, there is always a separation between you two. And again, you can't inhabit or reduce the other. They are infinite. And that is why ethical, non-over-consuming discourse and engagement is so important. Through that, we can get to know the other to some extent, while we retain our sense of selves and our ability to retreat into ourselves. People are so large and unable to be grasped like us. They are not objects, and that is what makes them so special, their spontaneity. Through our engagement with art, we are sort of able to transform art away from its static nature. We share that spontaneity. Discourse and interpretation of art allows us to remain tethered to our reality and our obligations in the real world, but also lets us engage with these characters and these dynamic roles of angel and devil, freeing art from its static, predetermined nature via our interpretation. Levinas praises this in Reality and its Shadow. The fact that one cannot contemplate in silence justifies the critic. He can be defined as the one that still has something to say when everything has been said, that can say about the work something else than that work. And that is how we revitalize art. That is why Undertale has never really died. Especially when we look at Deltarune and its fandom and our engagement with it as a reflection of Undertale. A lot of the same characters and similar ideas are explored in Deltarune, but reinterpreted, restated, re-explored. And that is why the creative presence of Toby Fox has never really waned in the online scene. You can see a reflection of this idea in real life with our behavior, and that is so fucking cool. Our engagement acts like the Lazarus Pit, just sort of constantly reviving this work of fiction with something new. Through our AUs, through our fanfictions, through our fan songs, our interpretations, our theories, these worlds will never die, as long as we keep meaningfully engaging with them, as long as we keep exchanging the white pen of hope with each other, as long as there's always synthesis between creator and audience, of angel and devil, of light and dark. These worlds will always be with us and always be spontaneous as a reflection of us. Through this mode of communication, as Levinas says with discourse, it leads to a greater truth. It leads to something greater than the sum of its parts. When people make games, they put their heart into the game. The creator's individuality, the creator's dream, the memory that the creator couldn't forget, the nightmare that the creator wanted to forget. The creator's love, that is the creator's heart. When a player whose heart matches the creator's, something strange happens. The game screen flashes like a cursed mirror. The player's heart begins to shine. That player will be changed forever, and they may receive an incredible amount of hope from playing your game.
But yeah, to sort of conclude this video, I was just lying. I think Toby Fox wants to fuck us! What did you think the whole friend inside me thing was about? If friend is Gaster and Gaster is annoying dog, and annoying dog is Toby Fox, that means Toby Fox is the friend inside us. What do you think Woody means? They say, hey, Tricky Tony, stop being so freaky. They're gonna put you in the freaky jail. But does Tricky Tony care? No. We all need to be the friend inside each other. That is the true message of Deltarune. Have coitus with your friend.